John Woo, he is undeniably one of the goats of the action film genre, with several hit films under his belt like Hard Target, A Better Tomorrow, Hard Boiled. जॉन वू ने अपने लिए इस जॉनरा की हिस्ट्री में एक जगह बना ली है, with his movies having highly chaotic gunfight, slow-mo, and of course the torture of the furniture. In fact, उनकी फिल्म्स इतनी influential है that he ended up creating a sub-genre of his own called Kung Fu. And while इन टाइप की फिल्म्स के कई सारे फैंस हैं, one of the most notable one was Craig Hubbard, जो जॉन वू से इंस्पायर्ड अपनी एक गेम बनाना चाहते थे with some light horror elements. He along with his folks at Monolith Production and some help from Vivendi started work on this game which was named Signal. And finally, after some revision of the game's title, FEAR was globally released in 2005. So, get ready to blast some hits, give furniture some pain, and bicycle kick our way through the replicas, because it's time to have a meeting with Alma. So FEAR की स्टोरी स्टार्ट होती है with a mysterious figure named Fedel, who goes rogue after the meeting with a small girl in red dress and starts taking control over the replica soldiers to cause utter chaos on the area of action. After which, we see him feeding on someone's body before cutting to a black screen where the incident is narrated to the player along with a small mention of a project called Origin. And just after the black screen, we are finally able to see the world through the eyes of our main character, who is simply titled The Point Man, and are also introduced to our squad named First Encounter Assault Recon, aka FEAR, जहाँ पर हमें orders दिए जाते हैं to take the bastard down. At the end of the day, FEAR की story isn't something too amazing, but because of how interesting it gets and at what pace the story is delivered, it gets its job done. And of course, सलमा का iconic character तो है ही स्टोरी को worth remembering बनाने के लिए. बाकी if you want further world building, तो game voice calls and some laptops के through तुम्हें कई message deliver कर देती है. And yeah, that's it. I really don't have much to talk on the game's story. With that out of the way, let's talk about the main stuff FEAR is known for, the gameplay. And in case you don't know about FEAR's gameplay, तो FEAR को इसी रीजन की वजह से one of the best FPS में से एक गिना जाता है. While FEAR is often recognized by its iconic bullet time, but there are also more things to its gameplay which people who have experienced the game could tell you about. So सबसे पहले हम बात करते हैं about the main stuff mandatory for a shooter to nail, that is the gunplay. And let me tell you, FEAR really excels in this department. And ये चीज clear हो जाती है right when you get into first proper encounter with enemy forces. Man, the moment you start firing at the replicas, you realize just how high the standard for gunfights would be in this game. भले ही there are total of just 9 weapons in the game, but जो भी weapons यहाँ हैं, each of them are fun to use. सबसे पहले आती है हमारी AT-14 पिस्टल, जो कि सिंगल हैंडेड और डुअल वेल्डेड दोनों तरह से यूज करी जा सकती है, and is a very solid alternative in case you run out of ammo. Then आती है RPL submachine gun, which has great fire rate and large magazine size, making it a beast at short ranges. Then comes G2A2 assault rifle, which has a decent range and damage, thus solidifying it as a good mid-range weapon, but beware it has a higher recoil. इसके बाद नंबर आता है ASP rifle का, that has a scope and is very effective long-range weapon. Then there is Penetrator, which is a single shot weapon that can literally pin an enemy to the wall and is pretty good for mid to long range encounters. फिर आती है Type 7 particle weapon, which literally burns the enemy to a crisp, only leaving their skeletons behind. Next comes the MP50 repeating cannon, which is a highly effective mid to long range weapon that could send an enemy flying in air. अगला है हमारा Mod 3 multi-rocket launcher, and as the name suggests, it fires multiple rocket projectiles at once. And last but not the least comes the VK12 combat shotgun that literally reduces an enemy to a fountain of blood at close ranges, solidifying its spot as one of the greatest FPS shotguns ever made. And I would like to think this shotgun was a primary reason they opted for a 3-weapon limit, giving you enough room to experiment with other weapons as well. Also, other than the gun themselves, FEAR के grenades and throwables are just as good. In fact, I would even go on to say they are right next to Halo grenades in terms of sheer awesomeness. Majorly because they are contact grenades, meaning rather than cooking, throwing and waiting for them to explode, they will explode on impact and can even be shot in mid-air using your bullet time. As for other throwables, there are landmines, which as the name suggests, explodes when an enemy is nearby or shot at, whereas the other one is remote controlled grenade that can be made to explode as per will. इसके अलावा you also get some layer of dynamicity in the melee combat, जहाँ पर you start with simple melee, but if you experiment a little, you can do a slide kick using crouch and melee while moving forward, and a bicycle jump using forward jump and melee. Then last but not the least, a roundhouse kick that can be used via jump and melee. And speaking of which, a huge thank you shall be given to the particle effects team, who nailed that awesomeness of action scenes in a John Woo film. When you shoot or blow anything in Fear, तुम्हें उसका impact बहुत अच्छे से feel होता है, फिर चाहे वो enemy को blood fountain बनते देखना हो from a close range shotgun fire, या फिर all the dust coming from walls due to some shots being missed, or my favorite being seeing all the rubble flying off in the environment due to an explosion, और इसके अलावा you can also shoot some resources in the environment to achieve the same effect. But यार weapons और particle effects चाहे कितने भी अच्छे क्यों ना हो, it would be nothing अगर enemies fun to fight ना हो. And luckily, Fear also nails that aspect. Man, Fear की enemy AI can still put many modern games to shame. Enemies will often come in a squad of 2 where one provides cover and other flanks and pushes you. सिर्फ इतना ही नहीं, they might knock a structure down in the environment to take cover or limit your access to an area so that they themselves can crawl through the gap to get to you. And let's say if you are hiding in cover and they know it, they would be really specific as to where you are, meaning that they won't just say he's taking cover. Instead they would say behind the sofa, behind the shelf, etc, etc. इसके अलावा there is also a decent variety of them to fight with, be it the common replica soldiers with their own variations according to the place and time in the story. Then comes heavy armored replica who are tanky, hard to stagger and often require certain level of precision from the player. फिर आते हैं replica assassins who are quite speedy and agile while possessing the ability to go invisible for a while. फिर आते हैं nightmares जो कि generally game के hallucination sections में आते हैं and can deal quite a lot of damage but are easy to take down. And lastly comes REV6 armored unit that often serves as mini bosses. As you can conclude by the above explanation, Fear really nails its enemy AI. But even then it wouldn't have worked as well as it did if not for the level design. With level design, Fear not only accommodates the way its AI works, but also provides the player enough room for exploration and strategy. You can try to scavenge the environment for some goodies, जैसे कि blue और yellow syringes जो कि तुम्हारी health और reflexes को बढ़ा देती हैं respectively, या फिर alternate routes जो कि तुम्हें help कर सकते हैं in tackling a tough situation effectively. As you can see by all of this, Fear checks every box to deserve all the praise it gets in its genre. However, there are also some issues that stops it from being a perfect game. सबसे पहले, let's talk about the big elephant in the room, that is horror. I was really not big on the horror aspect of the game. अब इसके दो पहलू हैं. अगर हम बात करें just the atmosphere, तो yeah, Fear thanks to its amazing lighting nails it and does a good job of immersing you in the world. लेकिन many of the time Fear rely करती है on its scripted sequences or jump scares for its horror. Also, I really wish there was a little more environmental variety in this game. इसके बाद आता है गेम का difficulty balance. मैंने Fear को अपनी first playthrough के लिए hard पर खेला था, but even then the game felt quite easy. And इस चीज के लिए मैं गेम की most popular mechanic that is bullet time को responsible मानता हूँ. Therefore, मैं तुम्हें recommend करूँगा to play the game on extreme, ताकि you can get at least some level of challenge. And yeah, that's it for the gameplay. अब ये यूजुअली वो पार्ट है जहां मैं गेम प्ले सेक्शन एंड करके साउंड डिजाइन और साउंड ट्रैक पे जंप करूंगा. बट मैंने सोचा कि अगर हम Fear 1 की बात कर सकते हैं तो क्यों ना लेट्स आल्सो टॉक अबाउट इट्स अमेजिंग एक्सपेंशन एक्सट्रैक्शन पॉइंट. EXP is just more of Fear 1 but even better. सबसे पहले there are two new and amazing firearms to speak of. पहले आती है TG2A minigun which as the name suggests is a minigun that is effective for crowd control. And फिर आती है Type 12 laser carbine which shoots a laser that can dismember or decapitate an enemy. And while horror is still not as top tier as it should be, Extraction Point does a lot to expand on it. Especially the final section that is the hospital might be the best horror section in the entire franchise. And since I talked about the hospital, I would also like to add that there is much better level variety in this game as well. However, in spite of all the things that EXP gets right, there is also a sad truth about it, and that is the game is no longer canon thanks to its ending. And मेरे हिसाब से यही reason है why this game's PC port is much more messed up in comparison to original Fear. Don't worry, it's playable, लेकिन it glitches more often and lacks the widescreen support. As for other flaws, Fear EXP is still an easy game. And yeah, that wraps it up for Fear's gameplay as a whole. Great, but with some minor problems. Both the sound design and soundtrack are top tier in Fear. All the sound effects for the guns and explosions are done extremely well in the game and makes the gunfights even more satisfying than they already are. As for the soundtrack, it really adds so much to the overall atmosphere of the game. To put it in short, both are awesome. You see, मैं generally first person shooters ज़्यादा खेलना पसंद नहीं करता, but the fact that I still loved Fear speaks a lot in itself. Sure, कुछ minor problems थी, but nothing that affected my experience. With that out of the way, I gave original Fear a 9 out of 10, whereas Extraction Point a 9.5 out of 10. Go play them now. अभी के अभी.